Welcome to the Panthers Movie Den, Episode 1. My name is Joe.
I'm Gary.
I'm Nick.
And our feature movie today will be The Shining. So The Shining, it's a 1980 horror film directed by Stanley Kubrick, follows Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall as his wife Wendy, and their son Danny, played by Danny Lloyd, who spend the winter looking after the Overlook Hotel, but cabin fever ultimately takes over and madness ensues. The movie is based on Stephen King's novel of the same name, though Kubrick took many artistic liberties, not wanting the author to be very much involved in the adaptation process, similar to when he made A Clockwork Orange. So, this movie's taking place during the height of Jack Nicholson's career. You got Chinatown, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and The Shining all within 6 years. So, I want to start off with just general thoughts on the movie. Go ahead, Gary.
So I'm a really, really big horror fan. I enjoy many different genres of horror. And I have to say that The Shining is probably one of, if not my favorite horror movies. It's up there with Halloween, 1978. And I absolutely love so many things from this movie. It's definitely one that I cannot get bored of. Because no matter how many times I watch this movie, I feel like I point out something different each and every time. And I love movies like that. And, you know, I feel like there's not that many horror movies that are done that way, where you notice a little thing here and there each and every time. Because most horror movies are clear, straightforward, but The Shining is just so interesting. And there's so many things going on that you're bound to notice something different every single time. And one thing that really fascinates me about the movie is like it has such a big production. It takes place in this, it seems like never-ending hotel. It's huge. There's a giant maze outside. I love the atmosphere, and it's so huge, but at the same time, there's scenes in the movie where everything just feels so small. Like when Jack starts going crazy and he starts like hunting down Wendy and Danny, like everything just feels so small. Like everything shrinks. This massive hotel almost becomes like one corridor almost. And it becomes so intense. And I have to say, pretty scary. It is pretty scary. And
yeah, that's another thing, because I'm not a big fan of horror movies, but The Shining is a big exception for me. It's one of my favorite movies, just in general.
yeah.
And that's another thing. I don't go into movies, especially that's another reason why I don't really like horror movies in general, is because I don't really care about being scared. When I go into a movie, I don't really care about, oh, is this movie scary? It's going to scare me. But this movie, it seems to care less, even though I read that Kubrick said he wanted to make the scariest movie of all time, referring to this movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't generally feel like it's trying to scare you all the time. It's more like it's trying to shock you.
Right.
And again, what the atmosphere is trying to create, it's more focused on making the atmosphere instead of shock elements.
Right. And that's one thing that I praise this movie a lot, because now you see a lot of movies relying on cheap jump scares, something popping out of the corner, gross imagery, gore, all that. Shining really doesn't have much of that. And I think just these certain shots, certain build-ups, and performances, especially by Jack Nicholson, is just so chilling and haunting. Like, one of the scenes that comes to mind is when Wendy has the bat and she's like swinging at him going up the stairs. He's so menacing and so creepy there, and there's nothing like over the top going on. It's just a man saying really disturbing things. It's really creepy, and I really like how just by dialogue they're able to get these emotions out of you.
Please! Don't hurt me!
I'm not gonna hurt you.
Stay away from me!
Wendy,
Stay away!
darling, light of my life. I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
It's really something that you really don't see all that often in horror. And I feel like this is what makes The Shining like such a memorable and phenomenal horror movie.
All right, so I am not a horror fan.
Sorry.
But I do like The Shining. There's a lot of things I like about it. I like the way it's shot, and I also really dig the atmosphere. The atmosphere is great, probably the best atmosphere I've seen in a movie. And I do like the performances. The performances are all fantastic, and the way Stanley Kubrick got those performances kind of messed up, but the final product kind of speaks for itself, and there's a lot of great scenes in there, especially the final scene where like Jack is chasing Danny through the hedge maze. And I think it is a great movie for, achieving atmosphere and not really focusing on the scares, but more just like the psychological madness of the hotel.
And another thing, like Gary, you were saying with the production, the estimated budget of this movie was $13 and $19 million. Now, when you compare it to something like today, I haven't seen it, but Gary, you've talked to me about it. The Nun, it's got a $22 million budget.
Oh my!
So we got.
Oh my God!
It was obviously it's 40 years, but it's 40 years before The Nun. But when you look at something like that, it means that Kubrick and his team, since Kubrick obviously is perfectionist, he doesn't have to rely on such big budgets. He just knows when he has his actor, he has his script, he knows what to do, and he executes almost everything he does perfectly every time. Like in this movie, like the word masterpiece, I never use that word, but everything in this movie you can tell is done so perfectly. Their shots, they're so well thought out. You look at shots like over the hedge maze, that's one of my favorite shots, I would say, when Jack is in hotel, when Wendy and Danny are first going through the maze outside and Jack's in the hotel. He's looking over of the small scale down model, and then the overhead shot following that is of Wendy and Danny in the maze looking like the little action figures. And
or even like the final shot of the picture of the ballroom dance.
definitely.
That's an amazing shot too.
yeah,
I love that one. That's one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. The final shot. It always gives me goosebumps. Like it's so. I just love it.
that's another thing. The final shot is probably the thing I've thought about the most after seeing it each time. I saw this first time 4 years ago, and I've watched it once a year since. Every time, I just find a new thing. Like Gary was saying before, again, you just find a new things every single time you watch it. And especially at the ending, the fact that Kubrick pans down to the 1921 at the end, it's just telling you that, was he there from the beginning? To me, at least, it tells you, or it's asking you, was he there from the beginning, or did the hotel possess him in a different form, just in the form of him? I think that's something like that. And Kubrick, again, with the atmosphere, that's probably the most important thing about this movie. It builds up all the tension, and with the performances, but especially the atmosphere. He said, I wanted the hotel to look authentic rather than like a traditionally spooky movie hotel. The hotel's labyrinthian layout and huge rooms, I believed, would alone provide an eerie enough atmosphere. And then when you look at something like the shots, especially towards the end, when you have Wendy running through the house, and you have Danny in the room, he's going through this mental breakdown, really, of going through his not powers, but the psychic abilities he has. And then you take into account how much has happened between people getting killed and stuff like that. But then you realize how much of that has such a big effect, and the impact is so big because of how tense it feels, the whole hotel. You can have something, just someone getting murdered, that's just a shock. But when you have the surrounding atmosphere providing for the context of what that means and why it's happening, then it becomes more intense, and it becomes just a better quality movie, really.
Yeah, for sure. Because one thing, like Kubrick has a point when he says that he wants to make it look. He doesn't want to make it like a creepy, like a creepy hotel. which is, I think, a great idea because then it'll fall under the category basic. Because there's so many movies now that
Definitely.
have these like run-down, creepy, abandoned houses. And honestly, if you saw a picture from them, you probably can't tell what movie they're from. They're so
That's a really good
similar.
point.
But if you see the Overlook Hotel, you know it's from The Shining. You know it's from there. It's unique. I mean, even the carpet is iconic. I feel like that's saying a lot. And I feel that that's what makes this movie stand out. It's really just a regular hotel, but you would think that since it's a horror movie, he would want to do more like run down, creepy, and scary. But Kubrick really proves that you don't have to do that to get effective scares.
That's probably one of the biggest things too, because you look at it, Kubrick's background. Obviously, it's not horror movies. It's just more drama and more. It's more complex movies. 2001, and Clockwork Orange, and then Barry Lyndon before this. But these aren't movies you expect for one of the biggest horror movies and arguably the most famous horror movie of all time. They come out as someone who not like a John Carpenter, nothing like that. But I think that just makes it better because he's focusing on the characters foremost and not, people getting murdered, not stuff like that.
Right.
All right. So when we talk about our favorite scenes, what do we say is your favorite scene?
Well, for me, it's so hard to pick just one because if I could say my favorite scene, the entire 2 hours and 23 minutes of this movie. But if I really had to pick, I'm stuck between three. One is when Jack is talking to Lloyd, when like the camera's panning on him, and you almost think that he's talking to himself, but then it pans and it shows this random bartender there, and you're like, oh, okay.
A little slow tonight, isn't it?
And then the way that Jack just starts like confessing things, like, yeah, I did break his arm, and like
momentary loss of coordination.
And like it's just so like something about his performance there I just love so much. Like it feels so real. Like it's so creepy to me, like how like you literally broke your son's arm and you're so like angry and like upset about it. Like it's really disturbing to see. And then there's like the whole thing like, oh, is Lloyd really there? Is Jack making this up? Is he talking to himself? Like, like those scenes like that really make you think like, what exactly are you watching right now? And my second favorite scene is probably the one that I mentioned before, where Wendy's going up the stairs swinging the bat to tell like Jack to get away. And I love the slow movement of like both of them going up this flight of stairs. Wendy just swing the bat like with every last bit of effort she has. Jack's just being a creep walking up the stairs. And I love the usage of light because it almost transitions into this red light, and Jack looks more and more menacing as he goes up the stairs because the red light is making him look really evil. And
I think it was definitely saturated a bit because when
Yeah.
Wendy goes up to the top, it's like the warm orange lights that you would just find in a regular hotel. But I think there was definitely something they did in post there. But it's still, it doesn't seem tacky.
No.
You can't tell that it was done on purpose, but I mean on purpose in the point that it's obvious.
Right.
Obviously, purposely, it was done to make it look like she's going into some sort of hell.
Right.
Some sort of other dimension, and that's on the second floor, where you find 237, where she finds the bear. Where the bear. and stuff like that. But it's like she's going to a different kind of dimension up there.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's also where all the problems you find, where you find Red Room in the room on the second floor. It's all on the second floor over there.
Yeah.
What about room 237?
Room 237?
You're scared of room 237, ain't you?
No, I ain't.
Mr. Allen, what is in room 237?
Nothing. There ain't nothing in room 237. But you ain't got no business going in there anyway. So stay out. You understand? Stay out.
Yeah, right. That's what I love about that. And lastly, again, like I also mentioned before, the final scene. I absolutely love it. I love how the camera just slowly pans. It takes its time to slowly pan on that one image, and then you notice Jack's in the photo, and then it pans to the date, which says, if I'm not mistaken, 1921.
Yes.
Yeah, July 4th.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a minute. Like, you know, the date throws you off, and then you really start to wonder what exactly happened. What really happened throughout this movie. And that's something that I love when movies do. When they really make you think, like, what did you just watch? Or like, what does this all mean? What is this all about? I love when movies do that. And having seen many horror movies, I feel like there's very few that actually raise questions like that. Like, typically there's a lot of, like, for a lot of these slasher movies, there's always a backstory. There's always something. They always try to explain everything to you, and that takes everything away. Like, takes all the horror really out of it. But with something like this, it really makes you think. There's never an answer. You don't know. So it's almost left up to your imagination, and I feel like that's what makes it so effective too, because you start imagining all these things, you start wondering all these things, and you might be right or wrong, but I feel like that's what makes it really interesting, scary, and 100% rewatchable.
And I think that's also another thing when people analyze it. I feel like different people can be right. There can be different correct answers.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's another great thing about it. There's not just one answer. I mean, obviously there's hundreds, thousands of people who will say, it's about this, it's about that.
I mean, this movie is kind of open to interpretation.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I think the good thing about that is that
there isn't just a straight line ending.
Exactly.
It is
exactly.
Yeah.
And Kubrick, another thing about him, he never talks about his movies really. If you try and it's rare to find an audio interview about him, especially something like this, a movie about this. He won't answer questions. Yeah, that'll exactly refer to blatantly just saying this means this means that.
Right.
And I think he's really just trying to say that I've done my job, and it's just your job to interpret it in the way that you think it was done, because I'm pretty sure he knows how good he is at filmmaking.
Exactly. And like that's what I'm saying. That's what I love, because there's just so many movies that I can think of. They're like, oh, well, this is how this character was born. This is why this person's evil. This is why this horror character does this. And it really takes the scariness out of it.
And that's really just another testament to the movie, though, that it's so respected in not only the horror community, but in the filmmaking community, that people didn't even dare to make a sequel to it. Like, they had the prequel that came out 2 years ago, Dr. Sleep, that it was based on the other Stephen King novel, at least. Someone didn't try and make some off-brand thing. Obviously, Stephen King's version of it in the miniseries. But you can tell nobody even dared to try and touch this, because it was different than a regular horror movie. You can have Halloween. You can have Halloween 2, not directed by John Carpenter. You can have something different like that. People can make that out of it's just a slasher. But something like this, it's more than just a regular horror movie, regular Halloween movie. Nothing like that. So, what would you say is your favorite scene, Nick?
Yeah, like, I'd say the ending. The ending shot of Jack in the photo is just fantastically shot. And it is a great ending because, like we've said before, it's not straight cut. It's open to interpretation. It literally means whatever you want it to mean.
And that was very nice of you, Gary, to take my favorite scene from me.
You're welcome.
Of Jack
it's my duty.
at the bar, which is my favorite scene in the movie. just because of how well the dialogue is delivered by Jack Nicholson and the actor playing Lloyd. And I think a great thing about the scene is that Lloyd, you don't see him blink. That he just makes him seem more ghostly. And the fact that in my mind at least, like when he sits down at the bar, you see the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. It's like Jack's looking at himself. Obviously, mirrors are a very important and purposeful thing in this movie, but that especially, it's like with Lloyd wearing the red suit jacket and everything, like a mirror of Jack himself. And the dialogue that ensues between them, I think, is just some of the best tension build up in the movie for no other reason than Jack admitting to himself how he still has this problem with alcoholism, which is overarching what I think the movie's about personally. But when Wendy comes in afterwards, he seems to snap out of that. And that just makes you think, where are the moments where Jack is being possessed, and where are the moments where he snaps out of it? That's another one of my favorite scenes, I would say, is when he's at the typewriter and then Wendy comes down when he's having the nightmare and wakes him up. At that moment, you see him being very genuine in how concerned he is about the dream he had of killing Wendy and Danny. I think that's a point where he really snaps out of it. But that's another great thing, and just how amazing an actor Jack Nicholson is. When you see the desperation in Jack's voice in the scene where he had the dream, and then compare that to how when he's locked in the fridge, Jack has the same sort of tone where he's saying, "Wendy, don't leave me," but you can tell this time, he's under the, he's being possessed by the hotel and its spirit.
What happened? Honey, what's wrong? Jack?
Most terrible nightmare I ever had. It's the most horrible dream I ever had.
It's okay now.
And that's just something that's so great about Jack Nicholson's acting.
I would also have to give him credit for his facial expressions too, because those really elevate his performance as well.
Definitely the best, especially when he's in the bathroom with Grady. Those are just the best ones.
His eyebrow raises, his like, I love his expressions. They're so great.
Like when he's in the bed, he's like, "We've all had moments of deja vu." It's ridiculous.
He's so good.
Oh my God,
If I could, I'd have posters of all of his expressions, hang them all up in my room, make a shrine, if you will.
And that's another thing before I was saying about how Kubrick, the experience that Kubrick has coming into this movie, it makes it more than just a regular horror movie. Jack Nicholson, he's already an established actor by this point. He's already won. I don't know if he won. I don't really keep track of the Oscars, but did he win an Oscar for Chinatown?
If he wins for Chinatown.
He won some sort of award for Chinatown. Because I remember that video of him on the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where he's accepting the award, and all the extras in the background going crazy. But yeah, the point is he's already a legitimate actor by this point, and the fact that he's in this movie gives him more credibility, especially at the time it came out. This is before Jack Nicholson, he would just star in a movie every now and then. He was still one of the biggest actors in the industry at this point.
It says here he won a Golden Globe for Chinatown.
Yeah, it was one of those. I don't really keep track of the Oscars that much, but whatever award you have out there, just give it to Jack Nicholson. Let's give it to Jack Nicholson.
Honestly, it's well deserved all the time.
And just when going back to the performances again, I think that, and Kubrick intentionally made sure to get an unexperienced actor for Danny, but I think he did it. I think he did a very good job.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah, and whether he knew about what the movie was really about, or whether he was just given directions to act in a certain way that would complement what's actually going on in the movie, I think he did a good job, and I think his reactions served the purpose of the movie. But not only that, I think that he was able to give a performance that was realistic and just a regular kid. Yeah. Because even the conversations he has with Dick Halloran when he sits him down, He's giving one-word answers. Kids don't have these big monologues that they're talking to adults to. They don't talk in a regular way. He talks in a very realistic way. I wouldn't be surprised if you just told him to respond as if you were having a regular conversation.
Mm-hmm. You know, I also have to give him, I give him credit too, because he was actually scared of the stuff that was appearing. Like when he sees the twins, he looks scared. Or like when he's crossing room 237, he looks scared. Because in so many horror movies, you see these children in the beginning like befriending like the villain or something. I'm like, why would you ever start like I feel like if I was that child, I would be terrified. Like what first pops into mind is like it. Child starts talking to this clown that appears in a sewer. It's like, I would run away if I saw that if I was a child. I don't think I'd befriend him. I'd be right out of there. But seeing The Shining, like Danny, I feel like has an authentic reaction to the stuff that goes on.
Yeah, like that's another thing about this movie. It's just, I said before, but it's just a legitimate movie, not only a horror movie. That's why I think people like me and people like Nick, who aren't necessarily horror fans, that were able to appreciate and enjoy the movie this much. It's because it was done with so much care and thought.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of attention to the characters, too.
Definitely, yeah.
Because in so many horror movies, characters are just there to be killed. Like, there's no thought or anything put into these characters. They're just the name, stereotype, trope, and dead. But in this movie, they're actually like really well thought out, and 100% makes this more compelling.
Yeah, and probably just because the last two shots you see of characters are of Jack frozen and of Jack in the picture, you forget Danny and Wendy get away.
Yeah.
They don't die. They get away from this. No matter how much trauma they experienced in that hotel and how much of a mental breakdown Danny had, they got away.
Yeah.
Except for Dick, who gets murdered with an axe in the chest. But that's irrelevant to that point.
Rest in peace.
Anybody here? Anybody here?
Always in our hearts.
But Wendy, too, I think, when coming back to the acting, a lot of people have criticized. It's you either hate her or like her in this movie. And I think that she does a good job. I don't think she does an amazing job. I don't think she does a terrible job like some people have said. Some people say that she did a very bad job in this movie. And between all the pressure she was put through on set, I think she gave a really, really believable performance.
100%.
And when casting the movie also, I read that Kubrick, as opposed to in the novel where Wendy was a more attractive and outgoing character and wife to Jack, Kubrick wanted to make sure that, as opposed to that, to get an actress for Wendy who would almost be vulnerable and just put up with him and be able to put up with what the alcoholism and the abuse and stuff like that. And I think she plays that part perfectly.
If anything, it makes the story more believable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, we should also just say this, like, this film is nothing like the book. Can we at least agree on that?
If I read the book, I would probably agree.
Yeah, I heard that it's pretty different. I do want to read the book, but I know that's why Stephen King wasn't a big fan of it, because of a lot of the artistic choices that Kubrick chose.
Yeah.
Did you like Kubrick's film of The Shining?
No. Cold. I'm not a cold guy. I mean, I think one of the things that people relate to in my books is there's a warmth, there's a reaching out and saying to the reader, I want you to be a part of this. And with Kubrick's The Shining, I felt that it was very cold.
Yeah, I'm not sure personally how Anthony Burgess, who's the author of Clockwork Orange, I don't know how he felt about Kubrick's adaptation, but either way, between The Shining and Clockwork Orange, I'm glad that Kubrick didn't want the authors to have much say in it, because the way they turned out, you wouldn't really want it any other way.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Also, I think that Anthony Burgess didn't like the movie version of A Clockwork Orange because it got rid of the theme of redemption that is in the book. I don't know. That's kind of what he said about it.
Yeah,
but it's interesting.
I
It's interesting how someone can interpret your work differently and like put their own twist to it, make it unique. And I feel like that doesn't necessarily make it bad. It might not be what, like, sure, it might not be what Stephen King wanted, but I feel like it must be interesting at least to see like someone else's twist on your story.
Yeah, I think it's definitely different also if it's like a broken promise as opposed to just,
oh yeah,
I don't really care. I bought the rights to your book and I'm just gonna do it my way, as opposed to just, oh yeah, you said, oh yeah, we had to cut that scene out actually. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure Kubrick made it clear from the beginning that he was gonna make it his own.
He seems like he would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because he's also a guy who is used to doing adaptations at this point. He 2001's adaptation, and then he got, like we said, Clockwork Orange, and then after this, Full Metal Jacket is also based on a book. But I think that he made sure, and another thing, when he went searching for projects, he made sure to read, because he already had in mind he wanted to make an adaptation, so I'm pretty sure he just wanted to find a good story, have a base level, and then build upon that. So I think he did that great in each one of the movies I mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. And that's really good, because I feel like you have to read the material in order to know what you're doing. And I'm very happy that he actually took the time and did all this, because sometimes I feel like directors claim that they read the book, but I don't know. Maybe they read the synopsis on IMDb.
Yeah.
I don't know if they actually read the book.
Interrupt me. You're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me.
Oh, well, I was going to say about Shelley Duvall's performance. I want to talk about that too. Like what you guys were talking about before. That I heard that a lot too. That so many people say like, oh, she did a terrible job, this and that. But I mean, sure, you might have like, maybe like one or two lines that might sound a little cheesy, but other than that, I feel like she did a fantastic job. Like, she was a great counterpart for Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, I think definitely, given the circumstances, she really pulled through.
100%.
She was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that scene with the bat, like I always feel bad because like I know like I saw a thing where they redid that scene so many times, and she was like,
it was at least 70 times.
Yeah, she was physically exhausted from it, and like I always feel terrible seeing that scene, but like I really give credit to her.
At least we can sit back on the couch and enjoy watching a movie.
Yeah. Thanks, Shelley.
Literally sacrificing her mental state for this.
Yeah, I know.
But for our sake, so we're good.
What do you guys think happened, like, in this movie? Like, what do you interpret it as?
So, like I brought up earlier, I think it's definitely about alcoholism. I think that's the biggest thing that's a recurring theme in the movie. Whether it's blatant, like at the bar, or if it's something else, like not only alcoholism, but also drugs, and how that leads to his abuse. Like, you look at when he's locked in the fridge, and he's pretty much unconscious. He knocks over a bunch of boxes, and then, I mean, this obviously sounds like, if you haven't seen the movie, it sounds like I'm reading into it too much, and I'm not one of these people who would look at every single frame and try and find something to analyze. But he does knock over boxes that reveal a no smoking sign while he's knocked out. And also, another big thing is that towards the end, when his leg is injured and he's hobbling around in the maze, the way he's screaming Wendy is screaming like that, it's like he's slurring his words like a drunk. And that's at the point, pretty much at the climax, and when it comes down to the end of his spree of just being a psychopath really in the movie and trying to chase Danny and all of that. And I think that he's definitely feeling remorse towards his addiction, but at the same time, I think he just can't resist it. And that's when he ultimately gives in, I think, because you see, like I mentioned earlier, how he's going in and out of being possessed by the hotel. But after the bar scene, it's pretty much, except for that the one part where he wakes up from the dream, which was maybe just an error on the hotel's part, but from that point on, that's really where you see the rise of, or rather the fall of his mental state at that point.
And also, the one thing that we do know about their home life is that he used to drink, and he promised Wendy.
Yeah.
He promised Wendy that he wouldn't drink again after hurting Danny.
And that's two things you can say about the movie. Either it's something completely underlying, or it's something that was put out there directly.
Right.
And I think it's the latter, personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does anybody here know of the alternative end, or not the? Yeah, I think it's the alternative ending, or like the extended ending where they show Danny and Wendy at like the hospital, and then the owner comes back and gives Danny the tennis ball.
I heard that. Yeah, I did hear that, but I think that this ending is definitely better.
Yeah, it's definitely better.
When they leave, then you're open to interpret it as you can.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because if you went from, I don't know, the original sequence of that alternative ending with the photograph, or if that was not at that time a plan, but I think ending on that, it just ends you with mystery, which is just the whole theme of the movie itself. And if you were to just return to dialogue, I don't think that would fit with the pacing at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would definitely break the pacing.
Yeah, for sure. And
Which also is just, the pacing is just perfect in this movie.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love how it goes from 1 month, then Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, and then you almost start losing track of like how long they're here, and then it turns into like one full day, and then you just lose track, and it's almost like what the characters are going through as well. Like, you don't know what day it is, you don't know what time, everything just feels like it's all happening at once.
There's also, when I forget the exact time when it has a 1 month later title card, but I think from that point on, that's when it went to the days of the week. So I think maybe after the 1 month later part is when you start to see him get fully possessed by the hotel.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but I think he went crazy on a Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah. Wacky Wednesday.
Yeah, Wacky Wednesday.
Good guess.
That's about the ultimate wackiness you can get. I gotta say, he's a bad guy. I don't care what anyone says. He's a wacky guy.
Psychopath is what he is.
And this actually kind of brings me to one point I wanted to make. I feel like this whole movie is about a family, and when you think of families, you think of
a murdering psychopath.
Of course, of course, yeah, and you think of like, happy together. They would, everything would be nice, happy, loving, and everything. And when you think about your relationship with your dad, you don't really think about your dad chasing you with an axe, trying to murder you. So like, you look up to your parents. You love them, respect them. You look up to them. These are like really important people in your life. And when you have one of these figures turn against you, one of these figures that you love deeply, one that you have grown and trusted, when they turn on you, like in this movie, that's when it becomes scary. Because in this case, Jack is supposed to be protecting Wendy and Danny. That's like his role.
And protecting the hotel.
Yeah, he's supposed to. He's like the protector. Caretaker. Like, I'm sure before the events of this movie, Danny probably looked up to him, probably loved him very much.
I want you to like it here. I wish we could stay here forever, ever, ever.
And, he has this role of a father, and then he all of a sudden turns on his family, and then you lose all that trust, and I feel like that's what makes it also really scary, because it's someone that you've grown to trust, someone that you assume that your parents aren't gonna like chase you down with an axe, but like I feel like that's what makes it scary, because it's something like so personal to you, like trying to kill you.
I think that's also something that just makes it really sad, because
Yeah,
you can tell
for sure.
Jack had sanity at one point in this movie, especially at the beginning when you see him sit down and apply for the job of the caretaker at the hotel. He wants to have some sort of commitment in his life. He wants to commit, because he was a school teacher and now he's an aspiring writer, but he wanted to find some commitment in his life, so be able to reform himself in some way.
There it is.
Yeah. There it is. So, yeah.
And I think right off the bat you can tell something's a little off with this guy, because he was not fazed at all by the story that the owner of the hotel was telling him about.
That's what I was saying when I was watching it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
he's
guy,
not fazed in any way.
Jack's completely on board for the caretaker of this hotel, and the guy's like, by the way, you better know that people were murdered here. And I'm just like, that's not what you say to someone who's like, I'm down to take this job. You don't bring up that people were murdered here. It kind of brings down the mood, don't you think? And
Some people might be a little turned, like they might reconsider.
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna be like, Jack was gonna say, oh, this is the place of where a murder took place. No thanks. He leaves, and he's like, you gotta be kidding me. This is the 15th person I've come in today. Every single time I bring up the murder, they leave. Why?
I like how Jack hears this entire story, and
yeah,
he's just like
unfazed by it.
He's like, well, I can
Definitely
assure
an
you
interesting
that
story.
I can assure you that everything's gonna be safe with me.
Yeah.
Like,
and it was.
Yeah, I would say he did a pretty decent job.
I mean, did the hotel? Did he do his job? Yes, he took care of the hotel.
He did. Yeah.
I mean, Jack's really the protagonist of this movie when you think about it.
Yeah.
He's someone I admire.
Maybe they should play The Shining for a family planning video. For people, incoming parents that want to start a nice family, show them The Shining.
Yeah.
Let's see if they...
Same way I watch Eyes Wide Shut with my family every Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's the best Christmas movie.
Apex of Christmas movies.
Well, technically, wouldn't The Shining be like a family film? Like one
That's
to watch. Correct. Yeah, it's entertaining, so it's a fun family film for the entire family to watch. I think, next
Nick,
family movie.
What are your thoughts on Gary defending Jack's murdering spree?
Listen, everyone has some good in them.
Okay, Gary's sympathy towards, I guess, the devil here is cause for concern.
Listen, maybe I'll make a great lawyer defending Jack Torrance. I could do it
on his mental breakdown.
Yeah. I hope the bling gets put on Wendy and she gets put in prison.
It was her fault. She caused all of it. Ending. Listen, all he was trying to do was right.
That's true. He's trying to bother him. So annoying.
Yeah, it was like, hey, I made you your favorite breakfast, and he's like, get away from me. Like,
I'm trying to write what?
Or like, he has all of his papers there, and Danny comes over and just throws all the papers on the floor. Do you know how much work it must have been to neatly stack up all those papers, have it all in order? Then this little kid just comes and messes it all up. You have to clean all that up, put it back in the same order. It's not easy.
All right, so we'll get off of the defending a murderer subject, and we'll get into our closing thoughts here. So, would you say this is your favorite horror movie? Your favorite Halloween movie of the season?
Tied. Yes. With Halloween. Let me be clear, 1978, not 2018 or 2007.
I was definitely thinking 2018.
You could be a Rob Zombie fan if you want.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Sorry, Rob Zombie. Never remake
Why
The
you
Shining.
apologizing then?
I don't know. I don't want him to like appear. Have you ever seen Rob Zombie? Have you ever seen what he looks like?
I actually have.
He looks scared.
I don't blame you for that. Then, but
Okay,
I
see?
still will not apologize then.
Fine. Whatever. But yes, Shining and Halloween are tied for my favorite.
It's a great film, I think. Yeah, not being a horror person, I still think it's a great film.
I think it's definitely my favorite movie this season. There are very few movies, like I said before, I'm not really a horror fan, but there are few movies that I like of this genre. I like the Evil Dead movies.
Groovy.
So like Sam Raimi doesn't take it too seriously. But yeah, The Shining's definitely my favorite movie of this season. And I think that'll do it. That'll close it out for the first episode.
All work and no play makes Jack a very dull boy.
There's no very, it's just dull boy.
Whatever. He was very dull at some point.